Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to welcome the Iranian Foreign Minister, Mr. Abbas Araghchi, to our chamber today. Colleagues, the Security Council will consider today a draft resolution on the technical extension of UN Security Council Resolution 2231 on the Iranian nuclear program for 6 months, prepared by Russia and China. As is well known, we introduced it back on August 28th, immediately after the UK, France, and Germany attempted to implement the so-called Snapback in violation of all legal and political frameworks. However, we did not immediately put our document to a vote, hoping that common sense would prevail among our Western colleagues who would withdraw their unfounded complaint and demonstrate a willingness to engage in constructive negotiations within the format of the original JCPOA participants. We hoped that our European colleagues and the US would come to their senses and choose the path of diplomacy and dialogue instead of their clumsy blackmail, which could only fuel escalation in the region. What have we seen instead over the past 29 days? The same typical European scenario of pressure, raising the stakes, and ultimately deception. When submitting the aforementioned notification, the UK, France, and Germany assured everyone that they were prepared to abandon their escalatory course if Iran complied with the conditions set. Let me remind you that they outlined 3 points back then: resuming cooperation with the IAEA, providing information on the status of enriched uranium stockpiles, and returning to negotiations with the United States. Against this backdrop, Iran demonstrated itself as a responsible player, committed to a constructive resolution of this situation, despite the fact that it was entirely provoked by the hypocritical policies of Western countries. They now really don't like to recall that the current crisis surrounding the JCPOA was initially caused by the US withdrawal from it, and then by the consistent refusal of the European participants to comply with their obligations. Despite all this, Iran's colleagues demonstrated strategic wisdom and diplomatic flexibility, making significant progress on all the aforementioned issues. On September 9th, an agreement was signed in Cairo between the Islamic Republic of Iran and the IAEA. According to the agency's Director General, Rafael Grossi, this document covers all nuclear facilities in Iran, including those attacked by Israel and the United States in June of this year. Moreover, despite Washington's act of aggression, Tehran has demonstrated a willingness to resume dialogue with the United States. Russia initially offered this opportunity, proposing a meeting of the original signatories to the JCPOA in Vienna on the sidelines of the IAEA Board of Governors session held this month. The United States in the E3 publicly rejected this proposal. Iran then expressed readiness to engage with the US here in New York just this week. However, even here it was rebuffed by Washington. Thus, Iran has taken all possible steps to bring about a meeting between the E3 and the US. And what compromises have Washington, London, Paris, and Berlin made in these 28 days? None. No matter what Tehran does, Western countries are issuing more and more ultimatums. Colleagues, this isn't diplomacy, it's deception and the theater of the absurd. If the UK and France are truly prepared to fulfill their promises and abandon the snapback, given Iran's constructive approach, then the vote on the Russian-Chinese draft agreement gives them a final opportunity to demonstrate that they truly mean what they say. Moreover, this document, with the amendments made to it, now covers all, I repeat, all of their concerns, outlined as conditions at the end of August. It now calls for continued engagement between Iran and the IAEA, as well as for the resumption of negotiations in the format of the original JCPOA participants, which implies the presence of Iran and the United States at the negotiating table alongside Russia, China, and the European Union, EU3. These are opportunities for the United States to demonstrate its ability to negotiate and respect for diplomatic approaches to crisis management, rather than attempting to completely destroy the nuclear deal from the outside. Mr. Chairman, despite the failure of Western claims to implement the snapback, it is clear that the very lack of consensus in the UN Security Council on this issue is leading us all down the path of legal nihilism and a deepening division within the Council. This situation threatens to have extremely negative consequences for its core responsibility, maintaining international peace and security. It's difficult to even imagine the potential escalation in the Middle East that could result from a small group of countries using the UN Security Council to advance their own opportunistic interests. The Security Council has a chance to avoid such a dangerous scenario. It's literally on the table right now in front of every member. The Russian and Chinese proposal to technically extend Resolution 2231 for 6 months until April 2026 leaves room for finding a solution acceptable to all. This solution, as the main part of our project suggests, should be conducted through negotiations among all the original parties to the JCPOA, as was the case 10 years ago when the nuclear deal was negotiated. We hope that all our colleagues on the Council will vote in favor of this resolution, thereby demonstrating a responsible and depoliticized approach, demonstrating their commitment to diplomacy not in words, but in deeds. This is a moment of truth for every member of the Security Council. We hope that you, colleagues, will make the right choice. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am grateful to my colleagues on the Council who supported the draft resolution proposed by Russia and China on a technical extension of Resolution 2231 for 6 months until April 2026, and an immediate resumption of negotiations in the format of the original JCPOA participants to find a way out of the crisis surrounding it. Those members of the Security Council who supported this document reaffirmed their commitment to international law, equal and mutually supportive dialogue, and the maintenance of international peace and security. Its adoption would have preserved the international community's chances for a diplomatic resolution to the dispute over Iran's nuclear program. We regret that a number of our colleagues on the Security Council failed to find the courage and wisdom to support our project. Their abstention indicates, at the very least, doubts about the destructive course pursued by the US, UK, and France, which aims to completely destroy the nuclear deal and put an end to any diplomatic resolution to the crisis surrounding it. However, by their vote, they are becoming complicit. As for those who refuse to support our project, there are certainly no illusions left. These countries have definitively demonstrated that all their assurances of a commitment to a diplomatic solution to the Iranian nuclear program over the years were mere empty words. And from the speech by the French representatives before the vote, which amounted to a pathetic attempt at justification, it was clear that honesty, common sense, and integrity are things our Western colleagues have completely forgotten. Furthermore, those who voted against our draft also voted against Iran's further cooperation with the IAEA, something it directly and unequivocally called for in the second operative paragraph. So, colleagues, file a complaint against yourselves if any problems arise here. And, frankly, it's hard to shake the feeling that our Western colleagues haven't even read our draft resolution, since it already contains practically everything they've just called for in this room. Mr. Chairman, regarding the UK and France's claims that they allegedly launched a snapback, we categorically reject them and have outlined our arguments in detail numerous times, including in the joint letter circulated by the foreign ministers of Russia, China, and Iran on August 28th. A country that systematically violates an agreement cannot utilize the mechanisms it provides. This is supported by international law, in particular the Clean Hands Doctrine, the principle of the Kinservand Pact, and the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. Logic, basic justice, and common sense also point to this. Therefore, whatever our British and French colleagues may claim, their complaint cannot serve as the basis for any decisions or actions by the Security Council. Therefore, both procedurally and politically, the outcome of today's vote means only one thing. Since the Security Council has not adopted a decision on the technical extension of UN Security Council Resolution 2231, it will expire, in accordance with the deadlines set therein, on the date of the JCPOA's completion, October 18, 2025. After that, any restrictions and regulations it envisages, including those regarding the Iranian nuclear program, will become irrelevant. As I noted today, no snapback has occurred, nor will it occur. Any attempts to revive the anti-Iranian UN Security Council resolutions in effect before 2015 are unlawful and unviable. I would like to emphasize that the UN Secretariat has absolutely no grounds for renewing the relevant mandates. Any attempt to do so would constitute a violation of Article 100 of the UN Charter and would force us to seriously reconsider our relationship with the Secretariats. Mr. Chairman, Russia and China have done everything possible to prevent a negative development around the JCPOA and to create an opportunity for diplomacy. Now, full responsibility for any consequences of today's vote, both for the situation on the ground and for the future work of the Security Council, lies with those states that did not support our project. Thank you. I would like to briefly respond to the statements made by my French colleague. Jérôme, your explanations now sound even more unconvincing than your previous ones. Therefore, I ask you not to speak again. You're digging yourself deeper into the sand. You've presented supposed facts that bear no relation to reality, forgetting to mention the most important fact, which the Iranian foreign minister mentioned today, and which directly concerns your country. That there was an agreement, a draft agreement between Iran and the European Union, which should have been approved and which would have avoided the crisis. But your big brothers in the United States prevented you from accepting this agreement. You forgot to mention this fact. And this eloquently illustrates your country's true independence on the international stage today. Regarding your complaints about the Secretariat, I'd like to remind you that a delegation once attempted to initiate a snapback and attempted to do so under conditions absolutely identical to today's, when there was no consensus in the Security Council regarding the validity of this procedure. Then the UN Legal Office and the Secretariat decided that, given the lack of unity in the Council, they could not reimpose sanctions or restore sanctions committees that had already been abolished. We see no difference between that situation and today, so we are confident that the UN Secretariat will make an important decision and will not succumb to your pressure, not ours. Because we stand on the side of common sense and international law, while you are trying to impose on everyone an order based on rules that you yourselves are trying to formulate on your knees right now in this room. Thank you for your attention.